Now we have the Democratic candidate running for Attorney General in Mississippi, Greta Kemp Martin. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Thanks for having me, Brian.
Now, you're running to unseat an Attorney General in Mississippi that authored and argued the Dobbs decision that ultimately overturned Roe. Can you speak about the impact that the Dobbs decision has had in a state like Mississippi?
Yeah, so in Mississippi, here's what Mississippians know, right? They know that they have leadership that is completely ineffective, that has allowed and permitted a level of corruption that has historic levels of the state, and that we live in one of the states with the most healthcare and maternal care deserts that probably exist in the country. So when I'm going around the state and I'm talking about Dobbs and its impact, Mississippians want healthcare freedom, period. They know that this is not just about abortion. This is about controlling and limiting people's healthcare freedoms. And in a state like Mississippi, when we have failed to expand Medicaid, we have rural hospitals closing at every turn. We have corruption going unchecked by our state leaders, money that's supposed to go to the poorest people in the poorest state. They know it's time for a change.
Now, can you speak about whether there's a majority of Mississippians who do support Roe? Because even Roe unto itself, even in these red areas, I mean, you look at a place like Kansas, not exactly a liberal bastion, there is still a majority of people who supported Roe as a decision as it was. So is that the same case in Mississippi?
Yeah, so our campaign is really about meeting people where they are, right? And what Mississippians know is that what they have wanted for a very long time, which is Medicaid expansion, better health care, ability to keep doctors and nurses and physicians in the state, they know that to do that, the answer is not limiting healthcare in any way. And that is what I believe the majority of Mississippians are seeing. And I know my conversations with them, it's just a scary thing when you start limiting people's ability to make healthcare decisions. And what they don't want is their doctors having to contact their attorneys before they're diagnosing or treating their patients. So again, Mississippians know that the current state leadership is completely disconnected from what we need in this state.
Now, to that exact point, obviously the current governor, Tate Reeves, has his fingerprints all over this welfare scandal that you alluded to before. His administration fired the U.S. attorney that was responsible for bringing the suit. He protected the Athletic Foundation, which is composed of a bunch of his donors from the lawsuit. His fitness trainer was reported to have received $1 million that was funneled to him. This is just overt corruption, again, exactly as you mentioned, at the expense of the most vulnerable Mississippians, the poorest Mississippians in the poorest state. What should happen here?
Very simple. The attorney general should do her job and initiate an investigation and prosecute where needed. The problem is that my opponent has positioned herself in the middle of this extremist Republican agenda. She does not want to anger her Republican friends. She does not want to anger her Republican donors or our NFL quarterbacks. She doesn't want to do that because she knows that she is a gold star student for the Republican Party, and she in no way wants to ruffle those feathers. So what that has caused her to do is completely shirk her responsibilities and go after this corruption. You should attack corruption, whether it comes from a Democrat, a Republican, an independent. The Attorney General is there to represent the people of Mississippi, and Mississippians were harmed by this scandal. I mean, you're talking almost $100 million in stolen funds from the Temporary Assistance for Needy Family Fund. That is things that Mississippians on the ground need. But again, my opponent doesn't know that because she's completely disconnected from the realities that Mississippians are facing.
Yeah. To a broader degree, this kind of underlies the problem here, which is that Mississippi ranks 49th in economy, 49th in quality of life, 50th in poverty. Is there no acknowledgement from Mississippians that their current leader that there is a link between the current leadership that they've chosen and I guess the results of what that leadership has brought onto the state?
That's a really good point. Sometimes I read this data and I'm like, are people reading the same things that I am? Specifically, are our state leaders not seeing the same data that I am? And I'll be perfectly frank, I believe that Mississippians, for the first time in at least my lifetime, have a slate of Democratic candidates that they can believe in. We have a top of the ticket with Brandon Presley, who has brought such a dynamic movement to this state, unprecedented polling this close to Governor Reeves this early in an election cycle. It's just been amazing to see the movement that he has brought. So my hope is that this will motivate Mississippians to turn out. You know, Mississippi had the lowest voter turnout of any state in the country last year. And we are hoping that we can bring both Brandon Presley, myself, Shawaski Young, who's running for Secretary of State, and other Democratic candidates, we can bring out those motivating factors, because it is time to have a fresh start with our state leadership and dig out the corruption that's going on in Jackson.
With this whole slate of Democratic candidates, how do you divorce the agenda that you're running on from the issue of identity, which for so many people is what their political affiliation is? And so, like, it's not just easy to be like, oh, I'm a lifelong Republican or a lifelong conservative, but all of a sudden to expect those people to just, vote for a slate of Democrats. How have you reconciled that issue?
So I truly believe that my background, I have dedicated my career to representing people. That has been the keystone of my legal career. But I also come from a family who taught me that public service and community engagement and helping others is not about being a Democrat or a Republican. And that is so important when I'm out here talking to folks, to say you cannot look at the D or the R or the I after a person's name. You really have to dig into their ideas and how they're going to move Mississippi forward. You know, my father is a police officer. I'm the third generation in law. Both my grandfathers and my uncle were also law enforcement. And it has always been my belief, and the way I was raised, that justice and the application of the law is blind. It does not matter if you're Democrat or Republican. And what we are seeing now in state leadership, from the governor's mansion down, are individuals who are more focused on their party's agenda than what Mississippians have asked for. We have almost an 80% polling on Mississippians that want full Medicaid expansion. And we have leaders that have continually ignored that. As recently as a month ago, when our legislative session ended, they had opportunity after opportunity to bring about a minutia of change in this state, and they just turn a blind eye despite the fact that their constituents are telling them otherwise.
Yeah.
Mississippians need people that will listen to them, and folks like myself and Brandon Presley, we are ready because we are from the real Mississippi. You know, we are from North Mississippi, working class families, and we are not, living on our family's plantation in Holly Springs, Mississippi. We are coming from a working class group of people that struggled, and we know what Mississippians are going through.
What would your priorities be as Attorney General?
Well, of course, as I've mentioned, first priority is going to be going after the deep-rooted corruption that we have in our state. Future Governor Presley rolled out a very far-reaching ethics package yesterday on the steps of the Capitol that I'm in full support of, and I want to be a player in that. We have nearly $100 million that have been stolen from the state coffers that are supposed to go to the poorest people in this state. People who, we actually call them working poor, right? Because it's not that they're not working. They just can't make enough to live in this state. And my opponent has just twisted this office into a tool for the Republican agenda, and that just has to stop. But I also want to focus on dedicating a fair labor division in the AG's office. Mississippi does not have a Department of Labor. And in a state that is reliant and dependent on its workers, that is atrocious. Mississippi workers deserve representation, and they deserve resources. And if the state is not going to develop a Department of Labor, the AG's office under my administration will have a division dedicated to that. And then finally, I have a lot of priorities, but one that's very, very important to me. Post Dobbs, my opponent established an empowerment agenda, and I say that in air quotes because it's laughable. But empowerment is enforcing state and federal laws that protect women's rights, including laws against gender-based violence, laws against workplace discrimination, and using this office to push policies that benefit women and families, like paid parental leave, Equal pay for equal work, affordable childcare, the things that Mississippians need on a day-to-day basis.
How has the reception you've gotten on the campaign trail been thus far? Like when you've actually gone face to face with Mississippians and been able to speak with them?
People are excited, but they're also desperate. They are desperate for state leaders that listen to them, and they are desperate for state leaders that will bring about positive change. They are tired of being the 49th state at the at the bottom of every list of things that are good and the top of every list of things that are bad. And that is where people like my opponent have put them. They have put them at the last of the line because Mississippians are not the priority of our current attorney general. Mississippians are not the priority of our current governor. Mississippians, honestly, are not the priority of our current legislature. They need people, again, people like myself and Brandon Presley that have lived the life they have lived. I'm from rural Tishomingo County, a very small corner of this state, and come from a working class family. And it would be a great honor for me to be part of the narrative that moves Mississippi forward because I believed in this state. I wanted to stay in the state to see a better Mississippi. And that's what I'm hearing on the campaign trail. That's what people want. And I don't think that Democrats and Republicans are far apart on that. We just know that we have to get out there to Democrats, Republicans, and everyone in between, and we have to share our vision, that of me, of Governor Presley, of future Secretary of State Shawaski Young, and the others on this ticket. We have to get out there and share our vision, which is what we're trying to do, starting now early in this election year.
How can we help?
So if anyone can join our fight at gretaforag.com, that will be the best help that we can get at this point in our race. There's a lot there on how to donate, what our issues are, our platform. Of course, I'm on all social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, sharing and donating and just following along with our campaign as we push to November. That's the greatest help anyone can give us.
Great. Well, we'll leave it there. Greta, thank you so much for taking the time. Best of luck in this campaign, and hopefully we can, help move Mississippi forward a little bit with the agenda that you brought forward. So thank you again.
Thank you, Brian.